Hey everybody, it's Nick and I am here with a Articulate Storyline tutorial. And today I'm looking at very complex, very large numbers of triggers and how the hell you organize that stuff within Storyline. So I know I previously came from Lectora, and they had a premise of things called action groups. And action groups were amazing. So today my goal is to kind of show you how to hack layers within Articulate Storyline in order to simulate having action groups or complex actions like you would have in Lectora or Captivate. So first I'm going to kind of show you the thing that I built in the browser. So essentially this is kind of like a statistical analysis table, if you will, that I've created using an Articulate Storyline. Why the hell would you build it in Storyline? I don't know, but it kind of is a good example of how you can hack Storyline to do some complex functionality, complex logic with a bunch of triggers, and how you can kind of organize it to make your life easier. So essentially, the way this table works is you input a number in each of these rows and click crunch numbers. It will determine a sum for all of this, an average for all of this. It will fill out this column, which is essentially the number you have here minus the average, the number you have here minus the average, and so on and so forth. Then it will calculate this squared and fill it out here. So this number times this number fills out here all the way down. Then it sums all of those values. It uses that sum to determine a sample variance and a standard deviation for all of the numbers that you input. So I'd like you to pause the video now and kind of think about how the hell would I program this to do all of those calculations. And I will be right back after you pause the video. Okay, hoping you paused the video. If you didn't, that's fine. I'll kind of walk you through it, and hopefully this is beneficial in some way. So essentially, when I crunch the numbers, when I click this button, I want to find the sum of all of these things. So I'm going to need to make this plus this plus this plus this plus this plus this all the way down to be the sum. The average is the sum divided by 10. And then to get this number, I need to take what is here minus the average, which I need to calculate first. And then the number here minus the average, 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 all the way down. And then to get this number, this times this number times this times this, this number squared, which is the same as this number times this number, all the way down. Then I need to add all of these. And then I need to take that number and divide it by 9. Don't ask me why, it's just a mathematical formula. And then to get this, I need to take the square root of whatever this is. So if you notice how I kind of broke down the logic, it needs to come in order. I need all of these to be summed up, then to averaged, then to subtract all these from the average, then to square all these, then to add all those, then to divide that, then to divide that. So if you imagine all of the triggers that would need to happen to make all of these variables update, holy crap, there are going to be a lot of triggers. So let's use layers to make our lives easier. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of demonstrate this guy really quick so you get a gist for it. I'm going to go ahead and fill out 10s for all of these guys. Let me get in there. 10s. They're all 10s. So if I click crunch, boom, look at all that crunched its brains out. So the sum is 100. The average is 10. Wait a minute. Is it broken? Everything's 0. Well, no. The sum's 100. Average is 10. This is this number minus average, 0. Number minus average, 0. All the way down. 0 squared is 0, makes all this 0. Let me demonstrate by adding this, let's make it 500, what the hell? And I crunch the numbers again, okay, there we go, now we got something. So this, now the sum is 590, which makes the average 59. This minus 59 is negative 49 for all of them. 500 minus 59 is 441, and then 49 squared, I guess, is 2,401, and 441 squared is this, sure. I'm not doing the math, Storyline is. So there we go. That's what we built. And now I'm going to show you how we built it and how I use layers to organize the logic. So here I am in Storyline, and as you can see, I have input fields, and then I have references to variables. So there's a reference to a variable, there's a reference to a variable. Basically, to insert a reference to a variable, you can insert a text box, go to Insert, click Reference, and then double click the variable you want to reference to, or you can just type the %, the name of the variable, and then a closing %. I typically type it, but if you want to insert a reference, if you don't remember how to type it precisely, it's a good way to go. So first we need to add all these numbers, we need to find the average, and then we need to do all these calculations. Holy crap. So I'm going to minimize my slide layers so you don't cheat and look at how I programmed it. Not yet. We'll get there. Patience. So yeah. So if you look at my base layer, basically all I have is each of these text boxes, when they lose focus, it's setting the value of the variable. That's it. And then when you click crunch the numbers, it's showing a perform calculation. No, it's showing, tongue-tied. It's showing the perform calculation layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the perform calculation layer, and it just shows other layers. What? But we need to do show other layers. Yeah, we're going to show other layers. And this is where knowledge of how layer settings work is very important. So if I'm going to click this little cog guy here, it's going to hide other slide layers. But the most important part, when revisiting, reset this layer to its initial state. What does that mean? Well, let's look at the options real quick. We have reset to initial state, resume save state, and automatically decide. Automatically decide, Storyline is going to be like, hey, flip a coin. Not really. I think it resumes more than that. But automatically decide, stay away. You typically want to reset or resume, one or the other. So basically what's happening is when this layer shows, when the timeline starts, show another layer, show another layer, show another layer. And that's when the timeline of this layer starts. Now, what does that mean? Well, when I click this button, this layer shows, its timeline starts because this little bar here is at 0. Now, let's imagine a world where I changed reset to initial state to resume saved state. Tongue twister, I guess. Not really. So I click crunch numbers, perform calculation shows, and the play bar starts going. And then let's say I'm bored and I click crunch numbers again. And wait, I'm resuming the same save state. I'm at 2 seconds. But the timeline didn't start again because I'm still at 2 seconds and I resumed. So these actions don't trigger again because this timeline is already in the middle. It's not starting again. So by setting reset to initial state, every time I click this button, every time this layer shows, the timeline is starting at 0, which means the timeline is starting, which means these layers, these triggers trigger again. So that's kind of powerful. So we're going to get to it, but I'm going to perform a bunch of calculations, and I'm breaking my calculations into logical steps, kind of like how I talked you through how it works in the browser. I literally made layers for each of those pieces of logic. So each of these layers also, because I want the calculations to happen live every time, notice how I'm resetting to initial state on each of these layers, because every time I show that layer, I want the calculation to happen again. That way it's almost like a live breathing monster of a thing, and that's pretty cool. So I click crunch numbers. I show the perform calculation layer because I'm resetting the timeline starting again, so I'm showing layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and I'm showing them in a very particular order, and the order they need to happen. Remember in the browser how it's like, oh, well, you need the sum first to get the average, and then you need the average to get this, and then you need that to get that, and that to get that, and then those things, math calculations, yeah. So that's why I added the numbers, just so I could keep my brain sane. But essentially, what I'm doing first is I'm showing the check min layer. Let's see what we're doing there. All I'm doing is I'm setting x1, which is this box, and this box is x10, so 1 through 10, easy enough, to 0 if the number is less than 0. That's cool. So if they put -50, it's just going to set it to 0 for all of them. It just does that for all of them. Nice little error check. And then I'm showing check max. It's saying, hey, if it's greater than 999, that means they're a butthead trying to put like 1,000,000 in there to see if they can break my thing. Well, sorry, butthead. I'm just going to set it to 999 for all of them. Then I'm showing the calculate sum and average just to check back in. Notice I'm showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are going to run in this order. They're going to run in the order of the layers that I'm showing. Super handy. So now I'm going to calculate the sum and the average. To get the sum, I start off the sum at 0, and then I just add all of my x numbers. And then to get the average, I set the average equal to my sum, and then I divide by 10 because there's 10 numbers. Basic math. Amazing. And then we're going to calculate the deviations, which is this row here, which is basically this box minus the average. So there we go. To get this box, first I want to set all these values to be equal to what is in these boxes. I'm just trying to perform like operations at the same time. That way I'm not going back and doing all the math for one and then all the math for two. I'm just doing the basic step for each item all the way down. So first I'm making this guy be this equal to this guy be equal to this, and then once I do that, I just subtract the average from every single one of them. Boom, that row's done. Now I need to calculate the deviation squared. So first I make this guy equal to this guy all the way down. That's it. And then I multiply this guy by itself all the way down. That you mean multiply a number by itself? That's the same thing as squaring it. Boom. Calculation done. Let's go to the next one. Sum of deviation squared. Now that I have all this information, I just set, again, to create the sum, I set the number to 0. That way it zeroes out the previous calculation. And then I add all the crap that was here. Amazing. Calculation done. Let's go to the next one. Sum of deviation squared. What? Oh, I calculated the sum here. Okay, now I'm going to get the sample variance. To get a sample variance is basically this number divided by n minus 1 or 9. Because we have 10 samples, n is 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. Simple math. Do that. And then I want to get the standard deviation. So I set to determine a standard deviation is this number right here, the square root of it. Well, I can't do square root in a storyline, but I can execute JavaScript to kind of do that math. So I get a reference to the player. I grab the standard deviation value, which says storyline. Standard deviation value is this number, and I need to find the square root of this number. So standard deviation is now that number, and then I execute the JavaScript. I get that number, which is right here, and then I set the standard deviation again with the square root of that number. Easy peasy, beautiful storyline. So that's it. And basically, I'm just building the calculations on top of each other. Now, I want you to kind of pause and think about the ramifications of the ability of doing this. That was confusing. But think of the power. Imagine you're building a game. Well, you could have one slide master that has insane, crazy, ridiculous game logic happening in a formula kind of like this, right? They could be, there's nothing on these layers. I don't have rectangles, I don't have shapes, I don't have pop-ups, I don't have answers, questions, buttons, characters, nothing. It's just logic. So yeah, you could, on a slide master, be showing and hiding layers to your heart's content. Now, of course, you want to make sure to check not to hide other slide layers because that could screw up your interaction, your navigation slide. But if you're not hiding other slide layers, then yeah, you could have crazy logic for a game one place in a slide master broken so logically into layers, and your life would be amazing. So that's it. If you want action groups like you can do in Lectora and Storyline, just create a layer. Imagine, let's see how many triggers are on this. There's 8 triggers. There's, I want to say 12. I don't know. There's 120 triggers. Let's imagine I put all 120 triggers on my crunch numbers button. that would be miserable to manage because every one of these calculations almost has to happen in order. Let's imagine like I wanted to round to the nearest 100. Like that's an edited alpha. I need to round to the nearest 100 with each of these numbers. Well, I could just copy this layer. I could just duplicate it and call it like round, and then I could come down to here, and then I could copy that, and then I could paste it, and then I want rounding to happen after I check for max and min. There we go. And now any logic that I have in that layer will show in the correct order, and boom, I can do some logic to round to the nearest 100 or whatever. Pretty cool. So if you have some logic and it's blowing your mind and the amount of triggers is unmanageable, think about this hack, implement this hack, and give me a thumbs up, a like, and shoot me a tweet. Yeah, I'm going to include this file in the description below. I think that's how this kind of thing works. I think I can do that. I don't know. And yeah, it's Nick_Shelton on Twitter. And hit me up in the comments if you have any other things that really bug you about Storyline, or you're really running into a wall and you're looking for a solution. And maybe I'll create another video in the future to try and help figure out a better way to do things. So until next time, keep sharing the information and have fun. Bye.